All right, at this time, we will call to order the City of Kenai Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for August 14th, 2019. Will you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item A2, roll call, please.
Commission Chair Tweet,
Here.
Commissioner Springer,
Here.
Commissioner Halsted,
Here?
Commissioner McIntyre is absent, Vice Chair Fikes. Here. Commissioner Askin is absent, and Commissioner Greenberg is absent. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum?
All right, thank you. Item A3, agenda approval. Commissioner Halsted.
I move we approve the agenda with the addition of F1 and F2 supporting materials that were presented to us.
All right, and F1 is a letter of opposition to retail marijuana store from Kenai Christian Church, and F2 is a letter objecting to the 2 a.m. closure of the marijuana retail store, or retail stores. All right, so do we have a second?
I second that.
Any objection? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Item A4, consent agenda. Commissioner Halsted,
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
do we have a second?
I'd second that.
Any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. Item C, scheduled public comment. We have none. Item D, unscheduled public comment. Anyone wishing to come forward and speak to an item not on the agenda? And seeing none, we will move on to item E, consideration of plats. We have one before us tonight. E1 is Resolution PZ 2019-31. The original preliminary plat of Evergreen Subdivision 2019 replat submitted by McLean Consulting Incorporated, P.O. Box 498, Soldotna, Alaska, on behalf of Wallace and Leona Jackson, P.O. Box 1948, Kenai 99611. Can I get a motion, please? Commissioner Halsted.
I move we approve Resolution PZ 2019-31 as presented.
All right, we have a second.
I'd second that.
Second? All right, staff report.
Thank you, Chair Twait. So this preliminary subdivision plat, it is within the suburban residential zone of the city. The preliminary plat is shown on page 16, and it shows lots 5 and 6, and this would be removing the lot line between them. There's also 2 maps in the packet. One is on page 19, and one is on page 20. So the map on page 20 shows a zoomed in aerial view. And so the applicant would like to build a detached garage. They own both lots, but they did not meet code requirements to build their detached garage on the separate lot without removing the lot line. That is because their garage is that they want to build would be larger than 400 square feet. And flipping back to the other aerial map on page 19, just to show sort of how these 2 parcels connect with the surrounding ones. If the lot line were removed, it would still be consistent with the sizes of other parcels that are in the neighborhood. In my staff report, on page 11 and 12, I go through criteria for evaluating plats. This plat meets all that. They meet requirements for minimum lot area, minimum lot size. Access would be from Evergreen Street, which is a paved and city maintained street, and it meets the minimum street width of 60 feet. The plat does not dedicate any additional rights of way. Its street names are accurate on the preliminary plat. In my staff report, I noted that if water is like a sink or any sort of water hookup is put into the garage, there would be a requirement to connect to city water and sewer services. And in order to build the garage, the applicant would have to get a building permit. So I recommend approval of the preliminary plat, and that it should conform to all federal, state of Alaska, and local regulations, and that would include the requirement to get a building permit, and connect to water and sewer, since that's a local regulation. End of staff report.
All right, at this time, we'll open it up for public testimony. Anyone wishing to testify to PZ 2019-31? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Oh, does someone want to testify to that? This is the item E1 on the resolution PZ 2019-31. No? Okay. All right. Close the public hearing, bring it back for discussion. Discussion, Mr. Pencil Guy. Mr. Springer's got his pencil ready. Go ahead.
I'd like to make an amendment to that to include staff recommendations.
Okay. Do we need to,
Chair Twait, you don't need to do that.
We-
It's when you approve you're approving the planning, the PZ resolution 2019-31, and those recommendations are
included in
as
it?
section 1.
okay, so we're good then, okay, all right. Perfect, okay. So any other discussion? I have just one, I guess, for staff. I wanted to just clarify something. So, you mentioned if they, build it, they need to hook up, or if they have anything that requires plumbing, they need to hook up to the city sewer and water. Does that need to come then from a new meter or a new service from the property, or can it come from their existing house over to that? I guess I'm just curious.
I'm not 100% certain on the answer to that. I think it could be either, as long as they're not crossing someone else's property line. That would be something that would be worked out with the building
Okay,
permit
okay,
to figure
alright.
out the best way to connect without.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
okay. Very good. That's the only thing I had. Any other comments? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Commission Chair Twait,
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Commissioner Halsted,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fikes.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, we'll move on to item F, public hearings. We have 3 of those tonight. Item F1 is Resolution PZ 2019-27, an application for a conditional use permit to operate an approximately retail store. I guess there's something missing there. Yeah, some kind of square footage. Retail store described as Lot 2, C Plaza subdivision, and located at 12516 Kenai Spur Highway. Application submitted by ACG LLC, 5455 Kenai Spur Highway, Kenai 99611. Can I get a motion to approve, please? Commissioner Springer.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution PZ 2019-27.
All right, we got a second.
Second.
All right, staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair Twait. And I'll clarify, it was, this will be a 250 square foot retail marijuana store. And the staff report for this starts on page 21 of the packet. So the city received an application from ACG LLC. They do business as Red Run Cannabis Company. And there is an existing permit on this location. It is, it's for a marijuana product manufacturing facility. So on page 22 of the staff report, or of the packet, there's a staff report that goes over the history. So, just for this building. So there was an approval, and it's still an active permit in 2017 with PZ 2017-20. That one granted a conditional use permit for a cultivation facility and a marijuana product manufacturing facility. However, the applicant wrote the city in December 2018 stating that they were not going to cultivate there. So it's the permit that is still in place is just for the marijuana product manufacturing facility. And prior to this use of the building, it was a club. I forget the name.
Moose.
The Moose Lodge, yes. It was the Moose Lodge before this use. So now we have a new conditional use permit that would add a retail marijuana store to the building. So the marijuana product manufacturing facility would stay and continue to operate there. And then this would add a retail store to part of the building. In my staff report, I went over the review criteria for conditional use permits. So there's 6. One is that the use is consistent with the purpose of the chapter and intent of the zoning district. This location is within the general commercial zone. And that's where I note that the manufacturing facility would continue to operate, and this would be adding retail. I note that there's commercial activity that surround this building, so it is it's near the Sea Plaza strip mall, where there's other commercial buildings, and it fronts the Kenai Spur Highway. For criteria 2, it's that the value of the adjoining property and neighborhood would not be significantly impaired. And I state again that this is in an area that's surrounded by other commercial development. There is a suburban residential neighborhood that's behind the commercial development, and I showed that on a map. I'll find the page. So I showed a zoomed out map that has the zones, and that is on page 38 of the packet. So I thought this is a good representation to just look at the surrounding zoning, since this ties to this criteria evaluation, particularly the first 2, that that this proposed use, it follows the intent of the zoning district, and that the value of adjacent property will not be significantly impaired. So the map on page 38 shows that there's general commercial parcels that are directly to the east and west of this property that all front the Kenai Spur Highway. And then behind this parcel, there is a suburban residential neighborhood. However, customers would not be, they wouldn't be driving those roads that lead into the neighborhood. They would access the store from the Kenai Spur Highway. I did note for 2 that there is a dumpster, and that city staff, we conducted a site visit. There is a dumpster that I put as a criteria that should have a fence over it, and that would also improve safety, just to have it all fenced off. The 3rd criteria is that the use is in harmony with the comprehensive plan. I found this criteria to be met. In the comprehensive plan, the land use plan is within the comprehensive plan, and that's sort of the longer term vision of land use for the city, and this area was identified as mixed use. So I felt that the retail store agreed with the comprehensive plan, and it supports goal 2 economic development. The 4th criteria for evaluating conditional use permits is that public services and facilities are adequate to serve the use. There's city water and sewer connected to this property. The parking lot is already paved, and there's adequate parking. 5 is that the use would not be harmful to public safety, health, or welfare. And I note that the applicant has applied for a license for a retail marijuana store from the state of Alaska, and they would have to meet state requirements. They could not emit an odor, and the building is already set up to treat odors on site with the manufacturing facility. And then I did review the buffer distances. We did get, you'll note in the laydown, there was a letter of objection from Kenai Christian Church, and if those on the commission may remember in 2017 when this came through. This was before I was with the city, but looking back, there's good documentation that this was batted back and forth, and the church was found to meet the buffer requirement. So I felt, so I wrote in my staff report that the buffer distances are still met. We did run the report again just to double check if there were any new schools or churches or youth center, or any of the sensitive uses listed here that that would not meet the buffer requirement, and we still I still found this to be met. And then number 6 is that specific conditions can be added by the commission that may include access screening, site development, building design. So I recommend the Planning and Zoning Commission approve Resolution PZ 2019-27 with the following conditions, which is that further development conform to all federal, state of Alaska, and local regulations, that prior to operation, the applicant submits a copy of their approved license from the State of Alaska Alcohol and Marijuana Control Office, that the facility or the retail store will not emit an odor that is detectable by the public from the outside. 4, the applicant submits an annual report that's required of all conditional use permits. And then 5, that's the note on the dumpster, that the applicant will enclose the dumpster on the premises with a site obscuring structure that meets requirements in our code related to landscaping site plans. In 6, I noted that the applicant will still comply with the conditions of their existing permit for the marijuana manufacturing facility. So that's PZ 2017-20, that would not change. The last thing I want to add to my staff report is just that in the packet on page 37, there is a site plan. There is a site plan on, page 36, and that does show the fenced dumpster, and it gives an idea of the layout. So you can see the retail would just be a small portion of the building. And that is the end of my staff report.
All right, thank you. At this time, we'll open it up for public testimony. The applicant's here. Let him have an opportunity to come up first if he would like to. Go ahead.
My name is Roger Boyd. You want my address?
Yes, please.
It's 37095 Elephant Beach Road, Kenai, Alaska. And I am, myself and Mark Tyler, who's not here, are the principals of ACG. And I really just came to answer questions, and I didn't prepare statements necessarily, but I would just like to address the letter from the Kenai Christian Church a little bit. You know, I have great respect for them. I've actually met with the pastor before we did this originally, and great people, you know. And I think at the time he was telling me there were people in the church that, you know, wanted to, or that were against this no matter what, and mostly they were accepting of it. So I'm not sure where this came from exactly, but I would take exception with this sort of initial part about the shrewd debate and crafty measurement. I think Matt came like for 2 or 3 weeks in a row and watched on Sunday morning and watched the church and to see which was the main entrance. And it's close, you know, it's 509 feet or something like that. So, you know, there's nothing we can do about it. I think it's just the way the lay of the land is. You know, there's a lot of, you know, the other part about just the general marijuana business, you know, a lot of folks are going to have a hard time accepting that. Just as a, for instance, here though, I'm looking, there's a neon Corona sign closer to the church than our facility, and I think alcohol is just a lot more damaging to our population in general. And you know, I hear so many people talk about the children, and marijuana. And I know this is really not germane to what we're talking about, but I just can't resist, making my sort of standard comment, which was, in the black market, anybody can buy anything, anywhere, anytime. And when you have the legal cannabis business, the black market kind of goes away, or gets a little harder. So I think this is a big improvement to that, to have the regulations that we have. As well as, when my children were little, they would ask me if I ever used marijuana, and I lied to them. And, now that it's kind of out in the open, we don't have to lie to our children anymore. We can explain what its place is in the world. It's just an adult pastime, I guess, for lack of a better word. But anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents there. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer if I could. Or maybe I should discuss the evolution there in the building too. When we did get the original conditional use permit, we had strong plans to do cultivation there. We pretty quickly decided that's not what we wanted to do. And then we, for a short while, opened a garden supply store that had the same things that we use in our other cultivation facility that we sold. It wasn't very good. And now as we look at the landscape of the retail marijuana market, there's a lot of stores, all around, and it seems like it's becoming a little bit like neighborhood convenience stores. And so I think it's just a business decision we made to put a small store in there since we already have the building, and we're primarily going to just sell our own products there. And we do have people that continually kind of coming by and banging on the window and want to know what time you open or what, if you would just know what's going on. So, that's my best explanation for that. It's just a business decision that we made to remain competitive in business.
All right. Questions? Vice Chair Fikes.
So I understand that you guys opened up Red Run, and so this will be in addition to your facilities, but this particular structure is existing already, so I assume in the documentation here that everything is current as far as the requirements for the state, for the building, the structures, the security.
Well, in tandem with this application, we also have an application to AMCO, which is the Alaska Marijuana Control Board, to open up that facility there. And the plan here is sort of a schematic, and this is actually the same one you get again, although that one has cameras. The requirements from the state are really hard. There's a lot of cameras, there's security. I mean, it's unbelievable the packets they're there. The short answer to your question is yes. It's so much more difficult to get through the state. I tell people marijuana, the way marijuana is regulated in Alaska, it's like if the liquor store had to give every can of beer that came in the store a number, and if they broke a bottle of beer in handling, they had to report to the state that, I broke this bottle of beer, so we've got to take that number out of the registry. I mean, that's about what you're looking at here with the marijuana industry. I mean, every place in the building that has any cannabis in it has to have a camera on it, running all the time. You have to save that data for 40 days in case they want to come back and look at what you're doing. And I think I'm actually not involved in the day-to-day management of Red Run. My partner does it. I'm, I guess, a semi-silent partner. But I'm really proud. We're one of the few places or business in the state that hasn't had any interactions with the state. We've been very, Mark is super careful to cross the T's and dot the I's and keep everybody on the straight and narrow.
Commissioner Springer.
Just a quick question about signage. What kind of signage are you going to have on the building?
I'm not exactly sure of that. We will be applying for a building permit to do the very minimal, adding some walls and a couple of doors in the building to make it compliant. And so I know that is addressed during that time as far as the overall requirements. We do have a nice, the post and the metal work with everything. We removed the old Moose Lodge sign, And it won't be anything near as big as that, but that's what we plan to do, is put another sign up, on that same pole that's on the corner of the building. And we'll just, we'll be eligible to do that when the city allows, if we, when we get our building permit. We'll be part of that.
Commissioner Halsted.
I noticed just to the west of your building, maybe the next street over, there's another establishment that's a CBD clinic. Is that, are you affiliated with them in any way, or is that gonna, do you think that would affect your ability to, for sales, or?
Oh, I don't know. You know, it does seem like there's a, there's a proliferation of stores. You know, there's 2 or 3 other stores out in North Kenai. You know, when the state made their laws governing cannabis, they restrict the license. They sort of set it up so the market would decide. And I think that's just what's gonna happen. That's gonna play out. Can't predict the future on that.
Any other questions? I got one, I guess, just while you're here. Regarding, you said you've not had any infractions, so do they operate a little bit like ATF and a gun store? Do they just randomly call you and say, hey, we're gonna be there tomorrow, or do they show up unexpectedly, or is most of the stuff monitored through paperwork and that kind of process? They do? So they do show up? Okay,
They do surprise inspections.
okay,
Ex-law enforcement people.
gotcha, okay. And,
There's, you know, back to that tracking thing, there's a system they call the metric system.
right,
Computer system, which every time cannabis moves from anywhere, like in this facility, if we take, or even the retail store we propose, if we take cannabis from the manufacturing side over to the retail store, you have to enter it in the computer, you know, their numbers and manufacturing to set the license, and then transfer it, and then you have to also enter into the computer for the retail, which you separate. It's just very detailed.
and just, could you, because I don't know that I actually know the answer to this, and I should, explain in 100 words or less, what the manufacturing side of the stuff does. What are you doing in there?
It's kind of got two parts. One is the extraction of concentrates, where we take the leaf cannabis that everybody's familiar with, and have some machines that extract that, and oils out of that, waxes and oils. And then that is, you know, the stuff you put in little cartridges that people vape with, and some people just smoke it like that. But it's also used in edibles.
Okay.
So that's what, you know, we have both an extraction lab and a, you know, since it's still Moose Lodge, we have a kitchen, so we've been making edibles. We have one that's called Hayshade, that's been very successful, which is sort of a lemonade that's got some cannabis in it. You know, a very small amount, you know, actually it's a mild thing. But that's what we do. One thing, I'll just throw this out too, I did speak with Elizabeth Packaging.
Yep.
The planner about this, that, you know, our uses of the building's kind of been morphing and things have changed, so what we're gonna be doing is the rest of the building is not, you know, the existing manufacturing or the proposed retail, which is quite a bit of the back of the building there. We're gonna have that, make a submission to AMCO to let that have marijuana manufacturing going on in there. And that'll primarily be labeling and packaging and storage and that kind of stuff. Complete the uses of the whole building. And so I'm not sure, you know, we'll speak with the planner more about this, whether to amend the existing conditional use permit or apply for, I'm not sure we'll do that, but we'll probably bring that before the board, you know, sometime in the near future. I'm hoping.
Okay, and I might be ahead of myself a little bit on this last thing, and I have to go back and look at PZ 2017-20, but I thought we had put a condition on there as far as signage went, and it was kind of to appease the church a little bit, where there wasn't a need for signage, because it was just gonna, you didn't have retail customers and we weren't gonna be needing to cross that bridge at all. And so in marrying these two together and keeping the conditions of PZ 2017-20 there, I'm just wondering how we deal with signage, and I'm just curious, you mentioned signage, I guess we have our attorney here, we can discuss that, but I wonder if there's gonna be something we gotta work out between the two facilities or how that works, but I'm glad somebody mentioned signage, because I was curious about that.
Let's look at the old, I do remember that being discussed, but I don't recall what its particular original condition. We actually do have a small sign there, but it's for AK Hardware, which was for the cultivation.
Right, right. And you'd mentioned that people are knocking on your window, so I was kind of curious, well, how are they knowing that? But I guess it's Kenai, so that's how it works, so. Yeah, exactly, so, yep, so. Okay, I don't have anything else. Anybody else? All right, thank you. All right. Anyone else wishing to testify to PZ 2019-27? Go ahead. If you can come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
I'm David Hall, and I own the strip mall right next to the establishment in question. But my address is 48110 David Hall Road, Kenai, Alaska.
Okay.
Anyway, I was here before when this first permit came up and objected to them, and really still have the same concerns today. I was here and got to hear, about the signage as well. That was an issue that was brought up. But it's kind of the general concerns, the family orientation, atmosphere, the strip mall as owners of the mall. We share the parking lot. The church is obviously still right there. Very concerned how the loophole of the measurements was used on the door. But the church does use the side door, a great deal. So we were puzzled, how that wasn't taken into account to start with. The parking lot for the plaza is used by the church quite a bit. There's many occasions where lots of the church congregation will park over in front of the Sea Plaza. And now that the strip mall, we've been renovating it for 3 years now, and it's fully occupied. There is establishments in the plaza, but there's Bible studies, there's children, there's all these type of events. And just listening to some of y'all's comments on all the efforts taking place, even the dumpster, putting the fence around it, there's so much concern on the product that this establishment makes and the byproducts, the waste, but where's the concern about all the children and families? I'd like to know what research have you guys, as a council, has done for cause and effect of marijuana establishment use in the community. I'm just very concerned about the close proximity of this establishment to the strip mall as well as the church. And same concerns as before. I respect, business owner trying to make a living, but this seems really close to, family type atmosphere as well as the church. And I would just hope the council has done their research and will take all this into consideration.
Very good. Anybody have any questions? I would just, totally different, but commend you for the work you're doing over there. That is a great strip mall to go through now. I really enjoy it, so,
Well, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to keep somebody from making a living, but these are concerns, and I just wouldn't be true to myself if I didn't raise them, so,
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
yeah.
All right.
Chairman
Thank you.
Dwight,
Oh, you got a question?
I do have a question
Okay.
now. You mentioned about Bible studies or something of that nature in your strip mall. What, to what extent?
Shop, you'll see people from the church right next door that come there. I'm also president of the homeless shelter for men, the old Edie's building that we resurrected into a homeless shelter for men. So people go there too, we have Bible studies periodically. again, it's just the proximity of all this as people are trying to work through these issues.
Is it an organized time when they have these kind of studies, or is it just occasionally, or I'm just kind of curious how that
I think there is scheduled times, there's some that are not. You know, a lot of times, as far as a mission, some of the folks will go there in the morning time and meet with people that want to counsel them or guide them. Their Bible studies will be right there in the foyer as a coffee shop. The mall is used by many different groups. And that's what we try to usher in as just a family orientation type atmosphere. You know, when they're struggling, you know, things, you know, drugs and alcohol, and yes, I do realize there is a establishment in the mall that sells alcohol, but it's not a bar. It's, yeah, you can have a drink with your meal.
One last question regarding that. Do you, I don't know what's in your mall, I haven't been in there for a while, so is there like a recreational facility for youth, or youth areas, or
There's
what?
Play Azul's, a Mexican restaurant. There's Maggie's General Store, which sells various, all kinds of canned goods and foods. And there's a clothing store for women and men, and as well as Soothe, I think it's other type of bath products. And then there's Home Decor Store, and then there's Coffee Express. So it's fully occupied, the building is, but there's kids everywhere, inside and outside. And I just want to make sure, you know, it's going to still maintain that type of environment inside the building and out.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Halsted.
Have you heard any opposition or comments from any of your tenants in regards to this? I'm sure they've been made aware that there was a meeting. Has anyone had an issue with it?
Well, I haven't talked to them personally, but you know, we just got the notice the day before yesterday. That's the other concerning part. There was not much notice time we got the notice in the mail. Very disappointed. You know, this notice people should have received it weeks or months prior. It's hard to reach people.
Vice Chair Fikes.
Through the chair, you had mentioned when you testified that there was a men's shelter. Do you know what that address is?
Let's see. Are you familiar with the old Judy's?
I'm not.
So
That's why I
it's
was
the Friendship
asking.
Mission that's out.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so it's out north, so it's
Yeah.
greater than 500 feet away.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's still inside the city limits.
Correct, yeah.
Yes, I was just
Yeah.
inquiring if it was within that buffer zone is what
Yeah.
I was asking.
And typically, you know, that establishment's designed to get people gainfully employed again, teach them the Word of God, and try and help them in whatever way we can. But you know, it's more of a military type atmosphere, and you can't just lounge around there during the day. So in the morning, come 8 or 9, you're made to leave the building and go to job service or wherever. A lot of the times they'll come to the mall and hang out there, have Bible studies, and then wait for other establishments to open and look for work. Not every day, but that's what it's, and we encourage that. We want it to, you know, we want to try and help people.
Absolutely. You got a follow-up?
Through the chair, so were you also in operation at the time that the Moose Lodge was in operation? It was my understanding that was a bar.
It was, we had thought, plus it was merely, for all practical purposes, not a going concern. We were actually involved, or in the process of trying to buy the building when, Red Run bought the building, or whatever their proper business name is.
Sure.
We were, you know, had this vision that we were gonna try and create a family town square, if you will, and I think we were just a little late. But again, you know, it was a bar, but the Moose is not like a regular bar. The Moose was structured with, family and kids could come, and it was more of a family type setup. That's how the Moose was originally structured.
Anyone else? All right, I'll let you go now. Thanks. All right, anyone else wishing to testify to PZ 2019-27? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion.
Chairman Toy.
Commissioner Springer.
Just wanted, I'm hearkening back to 2017 when we went through this before as to the, again, the distance between doors to the church. And so I'm still a little bit concerned about that aspect of it, whether it does technically meet our code or not, because of that 500-foot distance. So reading the staff report, I believe that it meets all the other criteria. I'm just a little bit concerned with that 500-foot separation distance. Maybe, I don't recall what the actual distance was that they came up with.
I think it, if I'm not mistaken, it was 509 feet. It was very close. And there is an entrance on the north side, which is the primary, considered the primary residence, and the one on the west side, which used to be the primary residence before, when it was the original church, before they added on a couple different times to it. And so I think, if I know the history well enough, that I think Wednesday night they do a Bible study night, and I think primarily they go into the old chapel then and go through that western entrance. But Sundays and all the other main events, weddings, funerals, all that kind of stuff, are funneled through that north entrance, which I think was where it became established as the primary resident, or the primary entrance.
I guess I was kind of going to ask staff if you had something from that meeting that gave us more direction on what it was. I just don't recall it, and that's why I'm kind of bringing it up again, just to see what we had from 2017. So.
Please.
Thank you, Chair Twait and Commissioner Swinger. So I have the file for PZ 1720 in front of me. So I'm looking, I have the staff report. I'm just looking at the resolution that has the summary of the findings from the staff report. So that's for the finding under criteria 5 for issuing a conditional use permit, the public safety, health, or welfare. It summarizes the buffer distances. So I don't want to read the whole thing, but in summary, it says when staff measured using the city's GIS, they found it 504 feet in length. It does state, so that's to the covered entrance, which is determined to be the main entrance. It does say staff also measured the distance from the entrance off McKinley Street, and that was about 420 feet in length. And then the applicant submitted a survey which shows the distance from the entry of the proposed commercial marijuana establishment to the covered entry of the church. That showed it to be 516 feet in length. And it says in summary that staff feels the buffer distance from the closest exterior wall of the proposed commercial marijuana establishment to the main covered Arctic entrance of Kenai Christian Church is over 500 feet in length, and the proposed project meets the buffer requirements required under Kenai Municipal Code. I guess not to read everything, this also, it talks about the additions to Kenai Christian Church. So let's see, the church was constructed in 1971. 1982, there is an addition, and it says in 2004, a new covered entry with Arctic entry was constructed to provide covered access to the church from the parking area located to the north, and I believe that is the main entrance that is being considered.
Yeah, that's, you answered my question. Mainly, I was concerned with what that westerly entrance, how far it was, and at 420 feet was what we came up with there, so that's, I had one other thought with that. Now I can't think of what it was, so I'll pass.
Gotta write it down. Commissioner Halsted. Oh, wait a minute, wait, if we can back it up, before he
got
loses it.
now. I was curious about, and maybe I can ask, Mr. Boyd about this. Is your entrance going to change from the location from where it was in 2017 then, or is it?
Entrance would be the double glass doors right in the building,
Okay.
which is kind of a foyer, and that will remain a foyer. You go in and take a right to visit the retail store, and left to go to the traffic.
Is that essentially the same entrance though as what was there before then, or, okay, that's all I needed. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Halsted.
I guess I just kind of think about a previous, I guess, concern they came up with another establishment where we were trying to decide whether there was a park across the street from it. And was it an issue that where it was, or was it that we didn't really care for what it really, if it was I guess my issue is it that I don't like it's a marijuana shop, or do I not like it that it's where it's at, or whatever. But I think what was brought up in that is there's so few, I mean, we really limited the locations where we could actually have an establishment, that to try and meet a requirement is very hard, whether now you're right on the line of it, which I think is an issue. One of the other things is, even though the establishment is changing from its what it was, that's been a cultivation facility for a while now, and there's been businesses that have moved into that Sea Plaza since it's been up. So not seeing I guess a pushback from the other tenants in there about it. I would say that not necessarily that they don't have a problem with it, but it hasn't been like a deal breaker as it came up with the other establishment as well. So I don't know. I guess that's a hard one for me. Whether it's I guess legally they've met all the requirements, and you know, they should be allowed to move forward, but it's I don't know what else to say on that. I'm kind of rambling at this point, but I don't know. There's my thoughts on the matter.
Very good. And just to clarify, I think you mentioned cultivation, but it's been manufacturing. They never did do any cultivation, just so we're got it clear on the record. So, but point well taken. Any other comments? I would like to address the signage issue, and I don't know if Mr. Bloom can help us with that, or if Elizabeth's got the answer to that. But I'm wondering, since we do have an existing conditional use permit, that I think we did limit the scope of signage. If you could maybe read that, that would be helpful, I think, to start with.
Chair Tweed, I actually do not see a condition that limits the scope of the signage. So the existing permit, there are 7 conditions. I may as well just quickly go through them so it's clear what the existing conditions are. So the first one was that further development conforms to other laws, so federal, state, and local regulations. 2, that a building permit is required. So at the time, this said it was for well, I guess it just says for the commercial marijuana establishment, but basically any construction needs a building permit. 3, that a landscape site plan is submitted for review and approval prior to the issuance of the building permit. The location of the sign would be on the site plan. It wouldn't have necessarily all the details of the sign, but at least like the post location would be included. 4 is that this one states that marijuana product manufacturing methods conform to requirements of the International Fire Code. The 5th condition is that the applicant submits a copy of their state license to the city. 6 addresses signs, but all it states is that a sign permit will be required for the construction of any proposed signage. And then the seventh condition is that the property owner, or the applicant submits an annual report to the city of Kenai.
All right. Well, that takes care of that, I guess. I was curious. I thought we had, we must have maybe debated it heavily then. I can't remember, and maybe agreed that we wouldn't, but maybe got it. Nothing in there. So I would like to throw out as an option here, and we can see where this, what the rest of the commissioners' thoughts are on this, but if it looks like we're going to be, split on this, or if it looks like we want to look at this with the full commission, I don't know if there's anybody that is scheduled to not be at our next meeting, but an option would be to postpone this and reopen the public hearing at our next meeting if we want to look at it from that standpoint. Not saying we need to or have to, I'm just throwing it out there as an option for a discussion point if it looks like we're gonna not reach any kind of a consensus here tonight, so just throwing that out for a discussion item if need be. If not, any other discussion? Okay, Vice Chair Fikes.
I can appreciate the testimony of the folks that are here tonight on both sides, and I agree with the staff and the city on their findings and the fact that it is a commercial zone and it is meeting the criteria of the commercial zone and it is zoned for such. So in doing so, I agree with the staff's findings, and I will be voting in favor of the resolution for a conditional use permit. I do understand there was some concerns on the sign, as it was stated when they first came before us for their application for conditional use. But they also came before us with Red Run for a conditional use, and there was talk about their signs and also their landscape and their site plan. So just as a side comment, I feel confident in the way they presented themselves and the way they move forward with their first establishment, that I would be confident that they would do the best practices for their second establishment. And so in their experience with their first one in the city, I feel confident that they'll be achieving the same result with their second.
I would agree.
Commissioner Halsted.
As long as that building doesn't become lime green with a 6-foot tall marijuana leaf on a pole, I think we'd be okay, right?
Chairman Dwight.
Yes, sir, Mr. Springer.
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate the same, is that I agree with staff's recommendations and that it meets the criteria of our code, so I'll be voting in favor of it also.
All right, and I guess I just want to, since Mr. Bloom's here, I want to just ask him and just get his opinion. Overlying conditional use permits out of the same building or anything, is there anything that we're not thinking of or anything that could become get us high-centered on any issue?
Thank you, Commissioner Twait. To answer your specific question, it's common for us to have 2 conditional use permits for one facility, and we prefer to have separate conditional use permits so that if they stop manufacturing, that conditional use permit would go away and they could continue to operate. The retail conditional use permit would stand on its own and vice versa. So it's common, and it's our preferred method to have a separate conditional use permit for each use.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, like I said, I agree that these guys have been, as long as they've been here at the other facility, and I think here that they've been exemplary as far as everything that I hear on the street, and again, he mentioned that there hasn't been any infractions. And I take these guys' position to heart. I understand it, but again, what we have to deal with is take the emotion out of it and go with what is presented here, that it meets the code of the city, and if it meets it by a few feet, it meets it by a few feet, and I don't think we have really any other option, and I think in that light, I'll be also voting in favor of it. So with no other comments or any discussion, I guess we'll please call the vote.
Commissioner Springer?
Yes.
Commissioner Halsted?
Yes.
Vice Chair Fikes?
Yes.
Commissioner Chair Tweet?
Yes.
Motion passes.
And again, there is a 15-day appeal period that an affected party can file with the city. So that's an option. If not, if no one's filed an appeal within 15 days, then the conditional use permit will be granted, subject to all the other conditions of the building permit and all those other things, so. All right, we will move on now to F2, which is Resolution PZ 2019-29, recommending the council of the city of Kenai amend Kenai Municipal Code 14.20.330, standards for commercial marijuana establishments to incorporate hours of operation for retail marijuana establishments into the city of Kenai Code of Ordinances. Can I get a motion, please? No.
I move we approve Resolution PZ 2019-29 as presented.
All right, do I have a second?
I would second that.
Second, all right, thank you. Staff report.
Thank you, Chair Twait. The staff report for this resolution starts on page 40 of the packet. So this is a recommendation that would go to City Council to amend City Code, and it would prohibit retail marijuana store sales between the hours of 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. within the city of Kenai. So currently, sales are prohibited between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. That is the state law. So state law states, or state law says that local municipalities can enact more stringent regulations, and currently the city of Kenai is silent on that. So we follow the state law, which is closure between 5 and 8 a.m. I noted in my staff report on page 41 hours of some neighboring municipalities. So I noted the Kenai Peninsula Borough, they have a closure between 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. Soldotna is between midnight and 8 a.m. and Seward is between 2 a.m. and 10 a.m. And then just for comparison, I threw in Anchorage's hours, and that's at retail marijuana stores must be closed between midnight and 8 a.m. Prior to drafting the resolution, I contacted all of the retail marijuana store owners. So at the time, there were 4. The applicant we just had before us would be for a 5th store, and so I just asked for their input. Most owners said that they were fine with having a closure. I did hear from one operator who did want to stay open until 2 a.m. And my rationale was, I guess if the borough includes Nikiski, so I thought to protect from competition, I would put it out there as between 2 and 8 a.m. is my current recommendation. Page 42 of the packet, that starts the resolution. So I just review the rationale for the code change that was in the staff report. And then the underlined text on page 44 that shows how the code would actually be amended. So it would just add a line in code for commercial marijuana establishments that would state that no retail marijuana store could conduct business or allow a customer to access the premises between the hours of 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. And again, a reminder, Planning and Zoning Commission acts in an advisory role for changing city code. So this resolution would be a forwarded recommendation to Kenai City Council. And that is the end of my staff report.
All right, at this time, we'll open it up for public testimony. Anyone wishing to testify to PZ 2019-29? Come forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Ron Ives, and 620 Cedar Drive. This is just for marijuana, not alcohol, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Why are you picking on marijuana? They've been picked on completely. There's, the way I see it is alcohol kills, roughly 18 people per 100,000 in the state of Alaska. Opioid is 9, and marijuana is 0. What's the problem if, in the summertime, if we want to stay open till later hours when everybody's down here fishing, like the bars do, of doing that? I don't see any reason for this. You know, so that was just my curiosity. You know, I had to state my opinion on it. I think it's just picking on marijuana again, basically. And I do own a shop. I don't use it, but I own one. And so I also own the CBD shop, which I do use. Yeah, I just wanted to state my opinion on this. I don't see a reason for it. We've always been, alcohol can stay open till 5 in the morning, and marijuana's less dangerous than that. So, where does this even come from? But anyway, any questions before
I got one for you. So without a time constraint on it now, how late do you stay open? How late have you stayed open?
I think midnight's about the latest we stay open. But
Okay.
yeah, and the problem is we probably won't stay open any later. Even than that, at times, even during the summer, it's just the idea that it's just another system that's not needed. You know, it's not. Most of us won't stay open later, but we hate to feel like we're getting picked on in alcohol because we stay open all hours of the night. You know, and part of the time I do take a little bit of alcohol, but yeah. So you know, that's my feelings on the subject. Any more questions?
Any other questions? Vice Chair Fikes.
Are there any security concerns for you if you're to be open late at night?
I have 28 security cameras around here, and I've got panic buttons, and everybody that comes in, out, in the parking lot. Police have even came in and looked at our cameras for other different things that's happened for the highway. People going down.
So in your opinion, there isn't any difference between opening at 2 a.m. or 5 a.m.?
Yeah, I think if all of a sudden we get a big rush down here during the summertime and people going everywhere dipping, and we want to stay open them hours, I think we should have the opportunity. Just the same as the bars do. You know,
And-
it's just my feeling on that. I think it's only fair.
And did you, or maybe staff can clarify, but is there another location outside the city of Kenai that's open later? Is that what I thought I heard you say? Nikiski?
Ms. Appleby.
Through the chair, I guess I did not contact owners of stores in Nikiski, but it was this was mentioned to me by one of the owners that he had concerns that there were stores in Nikiski that are subject to the borough's regulations. So the borough requires a closure between 2 and 8 a.m. And so he was concerned that if Kenai had stores that were required to close before 2 a.m., then it could spur people to go to Nikiski.
Gotcha.
There's an advantage in the future if we're ones that stay open.
Any other questions for Mr. Isaacs? All right, thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify to PZ 2019-29? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission for discussion. Vice Chair Fikes.
I guess my thoughts on it are similar to when we were discussing land use and zoning, in the sense that we wanted to have continuity with the borough. I agree with that, understanding that what our city operating hours would match the borough so that we don't offer any undue, competition, I guess. That's the way I would look at that.
And so we're clear, we're gonna recommend this to council, and there'll be another public hearing at the council level, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Springer?
We noticed, I noticed we had a letter of opposition that had come in too on the handout, or drop down or whatever. Anyway, she did bring up an interesting point about, maybe a possibility of traffic between Soldotna coming to Kenai, because we're open longer here than in Soldotna. I guess I'm asking, the commission's thoughts on whether or not that's an issue that we should think about, that's making it consistent with Soldotna. That's my only thought with it.
Is that an amendment?
No, not at
Okay.
this time.
All right.
Unless the commission thinks that it's something we should do, then I'll make an amendment. So I guess I'm asking their opinion.
Business in Kenai is the better place to be, so. Commissioner Halsted, any comments, or are you comfortable?
You know, my biggest concern was, not so much to keep stores closed, but to, I guess, prevent someone getting out of control with it. I think being able to police yourself and know that your midnight is obviously going to be a cutoff time where you're at diminishing returns. It's going to be less cost effective to keep your doors open than it is to not, is usually a pretty good way of keeping your time. You know, if you're losing money on it, then you're not going to stay open. So, but there was a concern that was brought up on a previous case where I think someone was going, I guess, exorbitantly late into the evenings, and that's kind of where I thought this kind of started with that. And I guess for that reason, I would say open it up for further discussion within the city. I mean, this isn't a definitive, we're setting a rule right now. We're just saying, let's get more, I guess, eyes on this and get an opinion. But I don't think so much as picking on a store or not, but just, I guess, preventing a potential bigger issue from happening.
All right, Vice Chair Fikes.
Through the chair, Mr. Isaac, if you'd like to come back up, I have another question. Since you're our industry person at the moment. So in your humble opinion, possibly, what are your thoughts on your location being in close proximity to a neighborhood? Is that any kind of a consideration for hours of operation that you would think, or concern?
We're not really too close to the neighborhood there. Do you know where we're at?
I believe you're on the hairpin turn. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Soccer fields, maybe, that locate kind of close?
Yeah, by Chumley's, which is just now moving out, right there. So we really don't have any neighborhood. We got Chumley's on one side, the woods on the other side, and then back there was the old Spur Motel. So we really haven't got much neighborhood around us.
So foot traffic, odd hours of the evening, not really concerned for your business?
No.
Undue traffic, headlights heading into the neighborhood, trying to get to your business, not really an issue. Signs contaminating the lighting of the neighborhood?
No, we do have lighting outside and around the building, but that's state requirement. We do have that, but it's not where it's blinding the neighborhood, but way back there. We're sitting on 2 acres there.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Yes.
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 All right, item F3, Resolution PZ 2019-32, recommending the Council of the City of Kenai enact Ordinance 3072-2019 to renaming, repealing, and reenacting Kenai Municipal Code Title 22 General Fund Lands, renaming Title 21 City Airport and Airport Lands, and repealing Kenai Municipal Code Chapter 21 .15 lease and sale of airport lands outside of the airport reserve to encourage responsible growth and development to support a thriving business, recreation, and cultural community through responsible land policies and practices. Can I get a motion, please?
Chairman Twait,
Commissioner Springer.
I'd like to make a motion to approve PZ 2019-32.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, staff report.
Thank you, Chair Twait. The staff report for this resolution starts on page 45 of the packet. So in my staff report, I went over how at our previous meeting, there was a presentation that was given that sort of went over the proposed changes. And then I reference a memo that the city attorney wrote to go along with the ordinance. So his memorandum is on, starts on page 49 of the packet, and so that summarizes in detail the sort of line-by-line sectional analysis of the changes. And then in my memorandum, I reference that, and then I state, actually, let me just make sure I'm on the right page here. Oh, I just have those back. Okay, sorry about that. I take apart my packet and I just had something that made me think it was out of order, but it is. So I just summarized what the changes would do, and I didn't refer to the line by line since that was already in the memorandum from the city attorney. So this ordinance, it would offer development incentives, provide for a competitive lease and sale process, and require development in order to discourage speculation. The changes would also offer uniform conditions for determining lease lengths, predetermined conditions for lease extension and renewal, and protections for lessees from large rent increases. And I note that I thought the proposed changes aligned with the purposes of the comprehensive plan, and I specifically reference the land use plan that is within the comprehensive plan. And the purposes of that were to create a stable, predictable setting for future investment, maintain the quality of existing development, and efficiently use public roads, utilities, and services. And then I also mentioned two goals two objectives under two different goals in the comprehensive plan. So one was under economic development to implement business-friendly regulations and give a stable, positive climate for private investment. And an objective under goal 3, land use, is to promote the infill of existing and unimproved lots. So I recommend the commission adopt resolution PZ 2019-32, and that would recommend the city council enact ordinance number 37D2 2019 that would make these changes to city codes to address city-owned lands. I just also want to add these changes were formed with a working group from the city that was gone over a couple weeks ago in this. I have a packet that was distributed that went over that, and that it's part of a larger process where there will eventually be a land management plan in place. And these changes follow previous changes that were made to lands within the airport reserve. And so this would address other city-owned lands within the city because they're under two separate code sections. That is the end of my staff report.
All right, thank you. At this time, we'll open it up for public testimony. Anyone wishing to testify? PZ 2019-32. Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission for discussion. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Yes.
Chair Twait,
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Commissioner Halsted,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, we have no unfinished business under item G. Takes us to H, new business. H1 is an application for a lease of city-owned land within the airport reserve described as a portion of Tract A General Aviation Apron Subdivision Number 2, located at 209 North Willow Street. Application submitted by SOAR International Ministries. Can I get a motion, please? Commissioner Halsted.
I move we approve application lease of city-owned land within airport reserve for SOAR International Ministries.
Do I have a second?
I'd second that.
All right, staff report.
Thank you, Chair Twait. The staff report for this agenda item starts on page 141 of the packet. And this may look a little familiar to the commissioners, as SOAR had applied for the same parcel, for the same use last year. However, the approval of applications for leases within the airport reserve is good for 1 year. And SOAR, they did not act on the application. They were to subdivide the land and then start building. However, there was not enough. The SOAR did not take that action, so their lease application expired, and City Council did not grant them a 6-month extension. So SOAR has submitted a new application for a lease. Page 146 of the packet has a pretty good map of the parcel. So you can see the parcel is outlined in red, and then the dotted yellow line shows the area that SOAR would like to lease. So it's currently a treed lot. It has pretty good frontage. It's on Willow Street is on one side, and then Granite Point Street is on the other. And then on a third side, there's direct access to the taxiway. I noted in my staff report that after discussion with the airport manager and another city staff, it was agreed that subdividing the parcel had some benefit to the city, so that the city is willing to share in the cost of subdivision with SOAR. And SOAR has again requested a lease term of 45 years. And I noted that they would need to, SOAR would need to ensure the fence encompassing its development would meet airport safety and security standards. This application went before the Airport Commission on August 8th, and the Airport Commission and the airport manager recommended approval of the lease application. I'll also note the extension that was requested by SOAR. The reason for not granting the extension was just that they were slow in taking action. It was not because there's anything with the actual development. It was just they had not taken action. There's no resolution that is associated with this agenda item. It's a question before the Planning and Zoning Commission if the commission recommends that the city execute this lease. And then the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation would go to City Council along with that of the Airport Commission. And then there would be a resolution before City Council that would give formal approval to the lease. And that is the end of my staff report.
All right, thank you. All right, well, she laid that out very concisely. So is there any discussion? Any question on what we're doing? Vice Chair Fikes.
So are they gonna be clearing all the trees, some of the trees, or?
Ms. Appleby?
Through the chair, I was so concise, I did not restate what their proposed use is. So, SOAR would like to construct an approximately 120-foot by 180-foot hangar. It would be used for aircraft storage and maintenance. And then there would also be a connecting office facility, aircraft ramp and tie-down area and parking. Activities that SOAR notes on their application include flight training, aircraft part sales, and then some meetings, storage of aircraft flights. There is a site plan. I suppose the application materials have sort of a mock-up of the building or the hangar. As far as the extent of the clearing, SOAR would need to have approval by the city before they're clearing, so they would need a landscape site plan. Because if you're clearing over 20, this is, if I'm remembering code correctly, I think it's, if you're clearing over 20% of a commercial lot, you have to submit an application to the city. So there would be a site plan that would need to be approved before the clearing, and also they would need to obtain a building permit. So I'd imagine that a good amount of these trees would be cleared in order to facilitate the development of the hangar in the parking lot. I guess I can't say for certain right now exactly which part of the trees, if any, would be left, other than there would need to be approval by the city before they could start clearing. But given the development size, it would probably be a good portion of the trees.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Commission Chair Twait,
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Commissioner Halsted,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fikes.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, moving on, we have no items under I, pending items, takes us to J, reports. City Council, Councilman Malloy.
Thank you, Chairman Twait. The city council met on August 7th, and we had two resolutions before us for public hearing that had to do with designating management authority for Traxon Buren Park subdivision. And so I've handed out to you like a parcel viewer that we looked at that would help with so you know what I was talking about. But this had been in front of the council before, and we asked them to bring back resolutions. Basically, there's a convoluted history over these parcels, and it was originally a 40-acre tract that was under FAA restrictions. In the past, the city general fund bought the 40 acres from the and so and the FAA gave a deed restriction, so there's no longer any FAA. It's not part of the airport reserve or anything like that. It was in effect general fund land. And then in what's now Track 3, in decades past, UAA leased that part of the property for a facility that they had, and then it didn't meet their needs, so the airport fund bought the lease out, and it was a 99-year lease, and the airport fund bought that out, and then in the past the city also moved the shop over to what's now Tract 1 because the shop had been on airport land and we had to pay rent to the airport fund, and so we put it over there so we didn't have to pay rent anymore. And then Dobbinspec Family Park is on Track 5, fire training facility is on Track 2, and then Track 4, actually this picture isn't really current. Part of Track 4 has been cleared also for the dog park, that was added to Dobbinspec Park. So what we did was pass a resolution that made Track 3 and Track 2 in separate resolutions to be basically designated for airport management, so that any revenues from those funds and, now and into the future go to support the airport. And the other tracks remain general fund tracks. And there's probably going to be some other, we have to deal with the road in there and some other rights-of-ways and stuff, so there'll probably be a replat at some point that you'll see. But that was the main business that we did at the meeting. We also introduced the ordinance that was in front of you tonight for your, and we sent that to you and to Airport and to Harbor Commission for recommendation. We also authorized a special use permit of 1 year for the Kenai Chamber for the Moose Meat John Cabin over there on the chamber property. And then during the, my report to the council and your meeting, I did report to them your significant concern over the lack of regulation in city code on remediation of gravel pits and, and requirements for gravel pit operators. Again, the council's aware of that, and it's a good idea for the commission to review that and get into that when you have the action from the Borough Planning Commission on gravel pits and surface extraction, and that comes back, whole subject comes back to you. So we hope you're going to be looking into that. Also, Terry Eubank was our acting city manager at the meeting because Paul Ostrander was out of town, and he gave us a little update on the dipnet fishery. And we were fortunate this year that there was no injuries, and there was no deaths, and there was no public safety response to swamping events, with our public safety boat on the river. And so, perhaps the Coast Guard coming down, may have helped. They had more of a presence on the river this year on those weekends. And also, he said we made almost 96% of our revenue projections and estimates that we had included in our budget for that fishery. So, it was we had estimated 430,000, and he said roughly he thought the revenue was 416,000. So it's not. So that was positive also. And so that's all I have to report right now. Thank you.
All right. Any questions? Vice
I
Chair
just had
Fikes?
a question on the safety on the river, where we had stepped up and said that we wanted some more involvement by the Coast Guard. Just out of curiosity, do we have any kind of apparatus or staff or personnel for the river? Such as, I know the Kiski folks came down and offered up their dive team for a situation that was happening, but I was just curious locally if the city of Kenai has staff or anything that could, I know we have a rescue inflatable, but do we have like dive personnel or anything like that?
I don't know about dive personnel. We do have more than inflatable. We have a pretty good size public safety rescue boat, and there's a combination of fire department and police personnel, seasonal officers that do patrols with that, during the fishery. As far as, I'm not sure about the answer about dive personnel, I can check into that. That had to do with, that homicide investigation. So the the Kiski dive team is, has a lot of certifications, and they were able to come down to the river because it was reported that a weapon had been thrown into the river, and they found it. So, we appreciate the collaboration between them. Just like another thing that I might report, on the, I think it was Monday or else Sunday, there was a fire, off of Cypress in Woodland Subdivision, and the property that's unsubdivided on the other side of Redoubt off of Cypress, And so we had, you know, the KFD responded to that, and then they also had assistance from the Kiski Fire and State Fire and Forestry, and they pulled in a helicopter, you know, to dump water on it, which is, you may have, well, you know, I live not too far from the airport, so I heard the helicopter, you know, for 4 hours on Sunday, but they put it out. And it was about an acre and a half burn, and it's under investigation, you know, by you know, our fire marshal and state you know, on what was the cause of that fire. It was off a trail that goes through there. So, but I'm interested in your question about dive, so I'll see what I can find out about that for you.
Yeah, I guess I was just interested, because like I say, it seems like for a unincorporated city, they got a lot of apparatus, they got a lot of staff, they got a really cool deals. So I was just curious what our city can come up with for
Yeah,
competition.
the Kiski Fire Service area has been well funded, you know, because and they, well, I shouldn't get into that on the public record on the how they may support, you know, other service areas, you know, whatever. But I'm not, whatever. Anyway, enough said.
All right, if there's no other questions, we will move on to item J2, Borough Planning, Vice Chair Fikes.
All righty, we met on Monday and we had a full house and we had a full agenda. We started off with a quorum and we had before us a utility easement in the Nikiski area to vacate a 10-foot wide easement that was approved. And we had a vacation of a utility easement in the California Beach area, a 20-foot wide easement, and that was in the Ravenwood subdivision, and that one was approved. And then we moved on to appointments. We had 4 commissioners that were up for reappointment, and we had 4 commissioners sworn in, myself included, as well as the East Peninsula Cooper Landing area, the city of Homer, and the Anchor Point and Nilchik area. Thank you. And then we moved on to unfinished business. We had a review of the Michael Pelch Homestead Edition, which is in the city of Kenai, and that passed. And then we had a public hearing, an ordinance 2019-22 authorizing a negotiated sale at fair market value in the Ravenwood subdivision, which was previously retained for a public purpose. That one passed. We had a resolution supporting the Kenai Peninsula Coordinated Public Transit and Human Services Transportation Plan, and that one passed. And then we had an ordinance amending the Kenai Peninsula Borough regarding their advisory planning commission and establishing an advisory planning commission in the California Beach area, and that one passed. And then we came on to an ordinance for adopting an updated 2014 Borough Hazard Mitigation Plan and removing the word "all" from the Kenai Peninsula Borough Code. And that one passed. And then we moved on to vacate 3 public rights-of-ways in the city of Kenai, an easement portion of the Riverview Drive right-of-way between Broad Street and the original town site of Kenai, the original town site of Kenai Ladville replat. I won't go through the whole thing. That one passed. Then we moved on for a vacation of a section line easement in the city of Soldotna, and that one passed. And then we moved on to number 7, which was a vacation of a section on a line easement and a pedestrian easement. And that one was number 7. That was the one that was the contentious one of the evening. Excuse me. That was to vacate a utility easement in the California Beach area, Ravenwood subdivision. That one was by a different petitioner. That was not contentious. That one passed, sorry. Okay, so then we moved on to, oh, there we go. It's a busy night. This is the one that failed. So this is the one that was in the Homer Ridge area. Some of you may have heard in the newspaper or on the radio. There was before us a petition to vacate a section line easement. As best as I can explain, it was the north and the south, and it was a section line easement that ran through a dead-end road in a residential area, and the petitioner was a celebrity, if you will. And their concern was a safety concern, and the folks in the audience that were testifying, excuse me, were concerned that there was an historical trail that was never deemed historical, but their concern was is that they were being pushed off of this trail onto the section line easement, which was very steep and very unsafe, and so they were hoping to retain, if not the trail, at least this section line easement, so they still had public access to go from north to south. The petitioner argued that he wanted his privacy. Him and the other landowners all were in agreement, as was the Department of Natural Resources, as was the state of Alaska. However, those that were there and those that testified felt that they were losing access, foot traffic to this historical trail, or the opportunity to move from north and south. As you look on the map, you could still gain access to Skyline Drive, you could still gain access to Dorothy Lane, but as the wording says, you have to have equal or better than access. So the petition failed 5-4, and so then we moved on to an Anadromous Waters Habitat Protection Conditional Use Land Permit. There was folks in the Poacher's Cove area that wanted to basically reconstruct a building on their existing footprint. They wanted a 28 by 48 structure. They wanted to tear it down, put a new structure in, basically. So that one passed. There was no issue with the river habitat folks. There was no issue with the borough or the Department of Natural Resources. Then we had a resolution for an application for a conditional use permit for the installation of an in-ground sleeve for a removable adjustable flagpole, and that one was passed as well. And then we had a review of the Kenai Peninsula Borough Plat Committee. All of the plats that were before us were approved. And then, because there just was still just a little bit of daylight left, we decided to tackle the comp plan. And that was passed on for the review as well. And we adjourned for the night at the wee hours of the morning. That's all I have.
Good for you. Any questions? All right, we will move on then to item J3, administration. Ms. Appleby.
Thank you, Chair Twait. I wanted to bring up the schedule. So I actually just went and wrote out the rest of the meetings for 2019. It's crazy to think we're that far along in the year that I can look at all of them in a row. But most importantly, I did the Tuesday, August 27th at 6 p.m. Is a work session that will be devoted just for the sign code. And then I have all of the iPads now. They're all charged and ready to go in my office, so that the iPad training would then be before the August 28th meeting at 6 p.m. So next week it would be Tuesday, Wednesday at 6 p.m. Are there any commissioners present who have issues with that timing?
6:05, 6:10, okay.
Yeah. That's the, as long as, I have a heads up that I know you have trouble making it at 6. All right, so I will go with that. I have a question for the clerk. So we have 5 iPads because 2 commissioners wanted to use their own devices. They still need to attend if they're not using the city iPad, or how does that work?
No, they don't need to attend, but they do need to sign the policy.
Okay. So Commissioner Halsted, you and Commissioner Greenberg, since you're using your own devices, as long as you sign the policy after the meeting, you don't need to be there at 6 on before the Tuesday meeting on the 28th. I'll send an email to you and Commissioner Greenberg, just so you're in the know.
Probably digitally sign that now, right? Or you email me, I send it right back. I mean, physically be here to sign.
I believe. Yeah. All right. So then the rest of the meetings for the year. So we're as per normal in September and October. We have 2 meetings. The second and fourth Thursday. I'd imagine there could potentially be a work session in there for sign code, but those are normally scheduled. I was just looking for November and December. We currently do have 2 meetings in November. There is one that's scheduled it's the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving. I don't know if it's too early to bring up canceling that one. I'll just look to the clerk if I should just do that later, if I can bring that up now.
They typically do it, but they typically do it the last meeting in October or the first meeting in November.
Okay, I'll leave that standing right now because I know we did cancel. We had one that fell on the 25th, so we canceled that one for December. So that'll probably be good just to leave it for now. And then if anyone is already looking to 2020, then I have that January 8th would be the first meeting of 2020.
Bite your tongue.
Too early. But anyway,
It's
that
like
was
putting
just-
Christmas stuff out in the stores already.
Yeah. All right. So just a review of all the remaining meetings, but the one in 2 weeks is probably the most important schedule change since that's a little different. And then I guess I can touch on we've still been. This will probably be the same report for a bit. We've been reviewing the individual files for the land management plan or the land management plan. Our staff person who we had hired, our temporary lands person, will be coming back soon. I should have looked up the exact date, but she'll be back soon to help finish going through the remaining parcels that are not yet in the database. I did attend a meeting for the Alaska LNG. It's the borough committee. The mayor was present from the borough, and he did state that it is looking unlikely that the project will be built. And so we were trying to figure out how to move forward with that committee. I guess I'll say my personal opinion from my past professional career working on EIS is I think it's still important to get the document right and to comment on it, even if the project doesn't go forward. The document's good for 5 years, and it'll be, even if someone wants to pick it up 20 years from now, they'll look to that document to start forming the new updated analysis. But I just wanted to report that was the mayor went on record at the meeting to state that he didn't think it was likely the project would move forward. But the draft EIS is open for comment, I believe, through October, if I have that right. Those are the main things I wanted to report on. I guess we've had some code enforcement. We've towed a couple vehicles. End of staff report.
All right. Any questions? So you may know the answer to this regarding the LNG project, which kind of perpetuated the relocating of the Kenai Spur. That's still going forward, the Kenai Spur relocation?
That is a good question. 'Cause my understanding is that the Kenai Spur Highway relocation was very tied to the project. I will find out just so I know for certain, because I without double checking, I would answer that if the project doesn't go forward, I don't think the Kenai Spur Highway relocation would move forward, but I can double check on that just to be certain.
Okay.
Is
Vice Chair Fikes?
the November 30th earthquake damage repair, is that part of that also out there? Does anybody know if?
That's kind of right where the road was gonna veer off into another direction there,
That's what
yeah,
I wondered if that
so-
had anything to do, if it was all lumped together.
Just happened to be, I think, roughly the
Yeah.
location where it was gonna start to change. So, I was just curious about that. All right, we are gonna move along. We have no informational items, additional public comment. Nobody here, so we went over our next meetings, commissioners' comments and questions. Commissioner Halsted,
No,
Commissioner Springer,
Nope.
Vice Chair Fikes.
All good.
All good here too, so that being said, the meeting is adjourned.